Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about transit Black Moon Lilith square opposition or in conjunct one's natal Uranus. Now, when we're talking about transits that involve the Black Moon Lilith, it could be about trauma, suffering, the negative manifestation of the sign, nefarious and fixated energy. And when transit Black Moon Lilith is basically making an adverse aspect to one's natal Uranus. So I'm going to elaborate on that. When I say basically adverse aspect, okay, what I'm saying is squares and oppositions, of course, those aspects are negative and adverse in astrology. Now, the inconjunct, though it's neutral, keep in mind neutral aspect can have good and bad qualities. And coupled with the fact that an inconjunct can often require an adjustment or transition, and that in turn, of course, can cause some exasperation and tension. So basically, collectively, I do see this as an adverse or negative transit. Now, anyway, when transit Black Moon Lilith is basically making an adverse aspect to one's natal Uranus, well, it may manifest in trauma, suffering, a negative manifestation of the sign, nefarious and fixated energy. This may conflict. It could be with one's friendships. If you're dealing, with some physical trauma or suffering, say if you have the transit Black Moon Lilith, say if it's in Aquarius, especially if it's in the first or sixth house in the natal chart. First house, of course, associated with the physical body. The sixth house can be connected with physical injuries. So it can be where it could be something like with the ankles or shins or calves or nerves or circulation. As an example, the transit, Black Moon Lilith is in Gemini. It could be something, with the arms, the hands, the shoulders, the lungs, or nerves as well. And keep in mind, Uranus is also connected with the nerves. And it might be something if you're dealing with some very negative energy in your life. Naturally, it can impact your friendships negatively. You might not feel as up to doing things with friends at this time. If you have the transit, say the transit Black Moon Lilith is in Capricorn in the fourth house in your chart, it could be dealing with some very cold or even ruthless, even tyrannical, extreme cases, home or family member at this time, or even someone you had actually felt close to home with. Uranus is also connected with our goals and aspirations, so it's really important to be careful at this time not to be overly obsessed and fixated with them. The Black Moon Lilith can be very fixated energy, to say the absolute least. Black Moon Lilith has somewhat of a little bit of a Pluto. I'd say it would be a lot like Pluto. It's very comparable to Pluto in its manifestation and the energy it expresses. And it can be something too where if Black Moon Lilith is also connected with death. So if you have experienced a death in your life, and whether it's something that happened recently or something that you've been thinking about that happened a while back, it might be something where it's hitting you home, where it might be affecting you in terms of trying to attain goals and aspirations. At this time, it might be something where it might be causing a distraction for you. Now, Uranus is also associated with one's future. And the thing about this is it can be a timing. The Black Moon Lilith is associated with what you want to keep under the rug, so to speak, what you want suppressed and what you don't want unveiled or to come out. And the fact is, there could be something that could be happening where, whether it's a criminal background or it's something you did in the past, that may have been nefarious, or it may have been something that was ill-advised. It might be impacting your future negatively at this time if it does come out. And it's something to be wary of at this time during this transit. It can be something where as well, and again, going back to the fact that, Black Moon Lilith is connected with fixated and obsessive energy, where you might wind up becoming overly obsessed or fixated on your future at this time. And again, going back to, I want to talk about, Uranus, now anatomically speaking, is connected with the ankles, the shins, the calves, the nerves, circulation. So at this time as well, I mean, keep in mind the Black Moon Lilith itself could be connected with trauma and suffering. So if you're dealing with any issues with again, those body parts I described that are anatomically connected with Uranus, it might cause more pain and anguish and suffering at this time, more so than usual, or you could be experiencing some trauma on another part of the body that might be possibly, maybe it's causing some exasperation with Uranus like ailments, or it could be doing something where it's making it harder to deal with what you could be going through associated with Uranus. And Uranus can also be about like unusual protrusions or growths, and it can be something too where if you have something like this at this time, it could be causing more suffering, because the Black Moon Lilith is associated with that, with suffering. And another thing too is that Uranus is very sporadic and erratic energy. So it could be a time as well where you're if you're experiencing any physical trauma at this time, or emotional suffering, or some kind of abuse, it may cause you to be doing, it could be other activities, and some activities in your life in a more erratic manner, and you may be lacking consistency in this as a result. If you have, say you have the natal Uranus in the 6th house in your natal chart, it could be some instability at your work or place of employment at this time, or people, or maybe your connections in your daily routine. It could be something even at this time. The 6th house again is connected with the daily routine, so it can be where things in your daily routine, your scheduling, might be more erratic and sporadic as a result, as an example. Now, another thing is that Uranus is also connected, with what's bizarre, what's unusual. And the thing about, when you have this transit, it's important to be careful not to become overly obsessed, overly fixated, on whatever it might be. And Uranus is connected with the bizarre, the unusual. It's also associated with astrology, computers, electronics, innovation, new technology. Because when you become obsessed and fixated on things, it can make you somewhat oblivious to other things that you can do as well. There's nothing wrong with necessarily doing things that might be unusual if it's not hurting somebody, and it's something that's very unique and different. I'm not saying go put suction cups on one's hands and start climbing the walls like Spider-Man or something, but it can be something where you're getting outside the box, so to speak. But again, being obsessed and fixated over it, or virtually anything, can be to your detriment. But anyway, Uranus is also associated with freedom and independence. There might be, you might be, again, not to be overly redundant, but you may be overly obsessed and fixated on that during this transit as well. And if you're dealing with some kind of physical or emotional suffering, that might feel like it's inhibiting your freedom and your independence. If you were trying to, say, go on a trip, or you were trying to extricate yourself from a home situation where you had a lot of people that were staying in it, and you were trying to strive for independence and find a place by yourself, as an example, that is where you may have some difficulty during this transit. And if you're dealing with some very formidable or powerful enemy, this could be causing some distraction at this time. If you have, say, the transit Black Moon Lilith in the 12th house, it could be somebody that's unseen, maybe like a stalker, or even in the 8th house. Let's say the 8th house could be connected with stalking, because it's the house that corresponds with Scorpio, and it's very obsessive energy. Now, anyway, Uranus is also connected with ingenuity, so it can be a time where, again, you don't want to become, or you become overly obsessed or fixated with, some kind of, whatever it might be. And Uranus is associated with innovation, with ingenuity. It's the point, again, where it's the exclusion of everything else. So it's really important to be wary of this at this point in time. Hold on a moment, people. Uranus is also connected with rebellious energy. So if there was a time where, say, if you were a kid or you had expressed some strong rebellious energy, it might be harder to keep it hidden or suppressed at this time. Remember, the Black Moon Lilith is connected with what we want and basically to keep under the rug at night, something that might, we don't want to come out. And if there was some, rebellious, or there was some bizarre behavior that you had been involved in at some point in time, that might be harder to keep it suppressed at this time, more so than usual. Now, Uranus is also connected with society, and it might be a time too where you feel, this time, for whatever reason, there may be, some conflict with society. You might be trying to, you might be dealing with some nefarious energy in your home life. Maybe it's causing, problems for you to go out into the world and be part of society at this time, or you're dealing with some physical or emotional suffering that might be inhibiting you as far as going outside into the world. And Uranus is also connected with groups and clubs and organizations. So the same could apply with those things as well, as far as dealing with some kind of physical suffering or emotional pain you may be going through at this time. And, if you have, say if you have this Black Moon Lilith transit in the 8th house, it could be some kind of emotional manipulation you may be trying to contend with or deal with at this point in time, as an example. Or, and the thing is too, Uranus is also connected with selflessness and altruism. So it may be a time where this is something you wanted to do. Naturally, it can be, more difficult at this time, more so than usual, or you might be overly obsessed or fixated on doing, things that are altruistic at this time, more so than usual. And anyway, now another thing too is that another way this transit may be expressed. Speaking of overly fixated, you might be overly fixated or obsessed, perhaps with trying to attain goals and aspirations at this time. Now, let's say, for example, if the natal Uranus is in Libra in the 5th house, it could be doing something with tennis or gymnastics, because those are sports of balance, and in the 5th house, and the 5th house is connected with sports. And also, there may be more difficulty trying to keep what you want suppressed or concealed, which is the Black Moon Lilith, from friends and even maybe people on the internet. And that's, of course, that's Uranus. Now, let's say, for example, if the transit Black Moon Lilith is in Scorpio in the 2nd house, it could be, perhaps there might be some compulsive, and maybe being compulsive, which is Scorpio, regarding, it could be possessions, regarding hoarding possessions at this time, and which is the 2nd house. And also to trauma, which is the Black Moon Lilith, may adversely affect your future, which is associated with Uranus. Now, let's say, for example, if the natal Uranus is in Sagittarius in the 10th house, it could be doing something with sports, publishing, or advertising, or religion, which is Sagittarius, which would be a career, which is the 10th house. Now, also to people that are prominent in your life or play a provocative role in your life, which is the Black Moon Lilith, may conflict with group activities, which is associated with Uranus. Now, if Uranus is in Capricorn in the 9th house, as an example, it could be business or government, which is Capricorn, group-related matters. And it could also be where, and it might be with something connected with that might be foreigners. You might be dealing with foreign people at this time, which of course is associated with the 9th house. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.